ഹലോ സെബിൻ സാറേ.
ഗുഡ് ഈവനിങ് അച്ഛാ.
ഗുഡ് ഈവനിങ്. രാജേഷ് സാർ ഉണ്ടെന്നാ തോന്നുന്നത്. രാജേഷ് സാറും ഉണ്ട്.
സാറ് ജോയിൻ ചെയ്തിട്ടുണ്ട്.
സാർ ജോയിൻ ചെയ്തിട്ടുണ്ട്.
സാറേ ഗുഡ് ഈവനിങ്.
Good evening. Good evening. We can start, right?
Yeah.
അച്ഛാ പ്രദീപാമ്മ ജോയിൻ ചെയ്തായിരുന്നോ? പ്രദീപാമ്മ
ഇപ്പൊ തന്നെ ജോയിൻ ചെയ്യാന്ന് പറഞ്ഞു. ഇപ്പൊ കോളേജിൽ
ഞാൻ ജോയിൻ ചെയ്തിട്ടുണ്ട് അച്ഛാ. ഞാൻ വേറൊരു നമ്പറിൽ നിന്നാണ്.
ഓക്കെ. സിസ്റ്റർ എപ്പൊ തുടങ്ങിയേക്കാം നമുക്കെന്നാലേ.
ഭാരതി സാറും ജോയിൻ ചെയ്തിട്ടുണ്ട്. സെബാമിസ്
അച്ഛാ
സെബാമിസ് സ്റ്റാർട്ട് ചെയ്യും.
Yes. So shall we begin?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay. So can you all please mute? Okay. So a warm good evening to all of you present here. So this is a great honor to have you all in this wonderful evening. So first of all, let me welcome you all to this international webinar series organized by Department of English, Pavanatma College, Murikesheri. First of all, let me invite all the eminent personalities to this webinar series titled Body as a Matrix of Resistance. And we are sure that you all will have a great experience being here with us. First of all, let's begin this occasion by invoking the grace of God. So we'll be silent for a moment and pray for the grace of God Almighty. Thank you so much. Let's begin today's wonderful session by the welcome address by our head of the department, Sister Jolly KV. Sister, please.
Dear respected Principal, Vice Principal, Father Bursar, Honorable guests of the day, Dr. Rajesh V. Nair, Dr. L.M. Parthi, dear colleagues, research scholars, participants, and my dear students. A pleasant good evening to one and all. Today is indeed a great day in the annals of the history of our department. It's happening right now, our long cherished dream, a webinar series. I gratefully acknowledge the genuine efforts of my colleagues, Father Dr. Tony Thomas and Dr. Sebin Justin, for this international webinar. We discuss and share our viewpoints on body as a matrix of resistance. Resistance is an act or instance of resisting, or it's an opposition maybe, or the term is very familiar for us these days because we hear a lot, like the Ukrainian soldiers continue their resistance against Russians as war enters 30th, 31st till 38th 39th day, like that. In literary studies as well, resistance literature is one of the subfields in which to study literary output that may be understood as a socio-political activity to resist dominant ideologies. We see a number of resistance strategies such as avoidance, contesting, biased processing, and various art forms and literature. I hope our webinar will be an efficient platform for getting various perspectives highlighted and would, I hope, illuminate our perceptions. Let me come to my task. I would like to welcome our Principal, Dr. Johnson V., Vice Principal, Reverend Dr. Benno Pudhiyaparambil, Bursar, Reverend Dr. Jayas Mettam, to this auspicious gathering. Our chief guest of the day, Dr. Rajesh V. Nair, who kindly accepted our invitation and consented to officially inaugurate the webinar series. Dr. Rajesh, Professor, School of Letters, Mahatma Gandhi University, is my very favorite and loving teacher, a friend, I would like to say, and was our external expert for all our doctoral committees. With a deep sense of gratitude and appreciation, I welcome you, dear Dr. Rajesh.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Dr. L.M. Perty is our guest of honor and chief speaker of the day. He is the coordinator of Research Consultancy Committee, English Language Center, University of Technology and Applied Sciences, Ibra, Sultanate of Oman. Sir, I would like to extend a very warm and cordial welcome to you to this international webinar, especially to today's session. And I would like to welcome all my colleagues, research scholars, participants, and my dear students to this webinar. Wishing you all a wonderful webinar series. Let me wish you that all these 3 days would enrich you, enhance you, and empower you, and wish you all wonderful webinar series. Let me conclude my words. Thank you and warm welcome once again. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sister, for your welcoming words. It's a great privilege to have the presence of Dr. Rajesh V. Nair, Assistant Professor in English, School of Letters, for inaugurating this wonderful evening. So may I welcome Sir for the inaugural address. So please.
As is the usual procedure, nowadays we are very used to begin a session by asking, am I audible, right? I hope I am audible, very much audible.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, you're audible.
Respected principal, vice principal, Bursar of Pavanatma College, convener, Sister Jolie Kevi, who is the HOD of English Department, Pavanatma College, Dr. Sebin Justin and Dr. Tony Thomas, coordinators of the webinar series, distinguished research person, and all the participants present here. A good evening, all of you. I'm indeed very happy to be with you for the inauguration of the international webinar series on body as a matrix of resistance. Indeed, I'm really excited about the topic, and I especially congratulate the department for on selecting this topic, such a very, very relevant topic. Okay, so before I declare that the series is formally inaugurated, I think I have a very important responsibility. A responsibility in the sense that I would like to, throw some light on this theme of the webinar series. It's very, very important. It's very important for us to contextualize the theme of webinar. Right? So I have specifically 5 or 6 points to tell you. Right? I can be very specific, right? Since we don't have time, because we all are eagerly waiting for the speech of our distinguished resource person, right? So I shall begin with the concept, the notion body as such, right? So when it's very problematic in the sense that we all are used to addressing body as a text. Okay, that's the primary thing I would like to tell you. So body as a text from which so many narratives are generated. We talk about discourses arising from body. How different narratives are inscribed on body, and the underpinning power relations within that. That's very, very important. And we all talk about the politics of body, right? And I happen to remember a book with the title 5 Bodies by John O'Neill, I suppose. 5 bodies. So body has got different ramifications. But primarily we have to think about, since the context is, body as resistance, right? We have to primarily focus on the area, I think, literature and human rights. So bringing humanities and human rights together, and we usually call it a human rights literature, HR literature. So so many writings, whether autobiographies, biographies, or memoirs, or any other, even fiction coming from. There are wonderful novels coming from Sri Lanka, even graphic novels. Even recently, I happened to read a graphic novel from Sri Lanka, Vani, VNI. So different forms of writings, whether it could be documentaries also, visual narratives also, right? There's a famous BBC documentary on Sri Lankan crisis. So different narratives, they address human rights violations around the world. And now we talk about human rights violations. So being a student or being a part of the fraternity of literature, I'm sure that you all agree with me if I say that we all have a major stake in transmitting certain values which challenge human rights violations across the world. And literature writers, they have a very major role. Not only writers, artists. We can take the artists in a general way. So those who belong to fine arts, they all have a very major responsibility to sensitize people, about human rights violations around the world. And now certain words are very, very powerful and charged, and some of the words are dissent. We talk about dissent. We talk about protest. So we talk about counter narratives. We talk about counter discourses. So all these things, highlight one aspect, that is resistance. And we all know about Barbara Harlow's famous book with the title "Literature of Resistance." So literature has become a tool of resistance against power structure of any kind. It could be state, it could be patriarchy, it could be caste hierarchy, it could be class hierarchy. So different layers of resistance from different vantage points, which we can see. Okay, so coming back to the focus, since we all are used to online teaching or digital space of late, thanks to COVID, paradoxically speaking, right? I am really interested to look at how resistance happens in cyberspace. And we all talk about. I'm just leaving some points so that by the end of the 3-day conference there will be some discussion at least. So I'm just leaving some space for that to connect by connecting different aspects. So I'm particularly concerned about digital pedagogy. I'm concerned about digital pedagogy and how body becomes a text how body becomes a tool of resistance. At the same time, body becomes a spectacle to be looked at by people around. Right. So that's the first point. In fact, I would like to highlight. Secondly, we all are now used to what we call medical humanities. So there's an interesting book titled "Literature and Sickness." So we are so much concerned about a body which is decaying. Right? We are concerned about decaying bodies. We are concerned about medical bodies. We are concerned about bioethics. We are concerned about health and wellness. We are concerned about disabilities. And we are also concerned about graphic medicine. So different genres, different forms of literature, they invariably talk about, this aspect, body as a decaying matter, and how the subjectivity keeps on changing or modified. I need not point out, Judith Butler's contribution to this. That's the second point, connecting body with the medical humanities. Thirdly, I'm so concerned, being a student of literature, I have always been concerned about human rights atrocities around the world. Since South Asia is one of my favorite regions, I have always been looking at South Asia with some kind of apprehension. And we know what is happening in Sri Lanka, or as a sister pointed out, we all know what is happening in Ukraine. So violent studies is one of the important sub-areas with which we can connect body. So when we talk about violent studies, we all are used to, reading diaries associated with the Holocaust. So Holocaust becomes a site, or Holocaust unfortunately happened to be a site from which so many narratives came out. We have Primo Levi's life narratives. We have so many memoirs, Holocaust memoirs. So torture becomes a very important motive in all these narratives. And coming to Sri Lanka, there are so many narratives coming out from Sri Lanka, from Middle East. And obviously, to give one example, a couple of examples, in fact, Naxal narratives. We have H.R. Warrior's famous memoir, Memories of a Father. And we have the famous fiction by T.D. Ramakrishnan, Sugandhi and Andal Devanayaki. So all these things, all these narratives invariably focus on body and torture, how power is inflicted on body, and how the different discourses emanate from that very brutal act. And obviously, violence studies is closely linked with the surveillance studies. So body being put under surveillance, and we know all about Foucauldian notion of panopticon, etc. That's the third point. The fourth point is about body as a waste. And of late, there is a very interesting area which is becoming slowly popular. That area talks about body becoming waste. And that area is now called waste studies, or discard studies. Discard, ASCARD, discard studies. I'll just give you an example to drive home the point which I would like to share with you. Just take the case of T.S. Eliot's poem, The Wasteland. So how human beings become waste, how bodies become waste, right? And we have got so many narratives, refugee narratives. There are so many narratives, personal narratives of refugees around the world. And we have so many examples. I need not point out that. And when we talk about body, another point which I would like to connect with this aspect is, body as waste. That is fat studies, FAT. So body becomes, an excess. Body becomes an object. Body becomes an excess. And we all know about body shaming. We all are used to that body shaming act. So all these things are very, very important when we analyze body as a tool of resistance, or as a medium of resistance. And we have so many umpteen number of examples to drive home. And body has other dimensions such as caste body. Think about Baka's body. Baka, the character in Untouchable, how he was beaten up. So caste dimension of body in Dalit literature, that becomes very, very important. Think about body in other writings, such as tribal writings. And we have C.K. Janu's famous autobiography, for example, and C.K. Janu, or Mother Forest in English. So caste dimension, class dimension, and the gender dimension is also very, very important. Recently, I happened to work on, gender aspect of transgender life narratives. I was working on a couple of transgender autobiographies. And gender dysphoria is very important. Gender transformation is very important in transgender narratives. So their body becomes a very important context. So body is also connected with race. So that if ethnicity, race, we have Ket Seeds, the South African novelist Ket Seeds novels such as Miss Grace, Waiting for the Barbarians. So it did not explain much. Okay, so one point you would have realized. There are so many layers of meaning or layers of implication associated with body. So we can approach body from different angles, from different vantage points. Okay, from cyberspace to print media, right, or visual media. So hence, I would say, I repeat, this is a very important and relevant topic in contemporary situation, where human rights violations are, going on. Almost every part of the world, right? So therefore, before winding up, I should say that I should thank the English department, Pavanatma College, Marikasheri, for extending an invitation to inaugurate the webinar series. So with your permission, let me humbly declare that the International Webinar Series on body as a matrix of power, body as a matrix of resistance is formally inaugurated. So thank you very much. I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much, sir. It was a great privilege to have you here, sir. And it's our honor that you are here to inaugurate our webinar series. And thank you so much, sir, for speaking about the various dimensions of body becoming matrix of resistance and various angles of representation of the body. And thank you so much, sir. We are indeed privileged to have you here. Thank you. Let's get on to the most awaited moment of this day. We are all waiting for the keynote address, and here, as our HOD welcomed him, I think no more words are required for me to speak about him, and we'll truly experience his intelligence through his talk. We are sure that. Anyways, we are so happy to have you here, sir. Elamparthi sir, and he's a research and consultancy coordinator in English Language Center, University of Technology and Applied Science, Oman. And may I welcome sir for the keynote address. Sir, please.
Thank you so much, Seba Susan John. It's my pleasure to be with you all here.
Thank you so much.
And I would like to first of all thank Dr. Rajesh Nair for having made my job really very easy, because he has given a very comprehensive, it was a comprehensive input about resistant literature, different dimensions of resistance literature. I'm really very glad. And I would like to thank, first of all, Pavanatma College and Father Dr. Tony Thomas for having given me this opportunity. And it is my pleasure, a great pleasure, to be with you all here in this very evening. And I am really, really honored and happy to be with you all. I would like to start with something that happened very recently in Kerala. I was just watching the International Film Festival of Kerala. And, I'm sure you all know, because most of them are youngsters here on this webinar. I just checked their names, and then I was looking at their cover photos. So I think they are all students. So I'm sure they know this. There was a director called Dr. Vetrimaran. I'm sure you know about him. Vetrimaran actually is a Tamil film director. He attended the International Film Festival of Kerala just probably 3 or 2 days ago. And actually, for right or wrong reasons, he hit headlines. And I happen to read it here in Oman. He said, now we are in a situation where the world is divided into two camps. Okay, we are in a situation where the world is divided in two camps, the left and the right. There is no middle. The left and the right, and there is no middle. He says, even if you say that you are in the middle, then you are in the right. When I actually listened to that, I was a bit shocked and surprised. I was immediately reminded of what George W. Bush said years ago. Remember when he invaded Iraq? Either you are with us or with the terrorists. But Indian media was so full of responses to that. I said, we are neither with you nor with the terrorists. That is precisely what I was reminded of when I heard this statement from Vetrimaran. Okay, so why do I talk about this here? Because as Dr. Rajesh Nair talked about different dimensions of resistance literature, today I am going to share with you my research findings. These are actually my initial opinions. Okay, they may undergo changes. Okay, so like I'm sure most of you will be interested in them, of film studies. Okay, resistance literature, because in Tamil Nadu, if you have, most of you, I'm sure all our youngsters, you would have watched all the recent films. They are all actually caste-based films. Vetrimaran is actually known for those films. His film Asuran, I'm going to show some of them and then we are going to discuss. So I'm sure it's going to be quite engaging. And then you will understand why I made this a statement. And you know very well I am in the middle. I'm neither in the right nor on the left. Okay, I am in the middle, so I can criticize both. And I'll tell you very recently, Kashmiri Files. The movie has actually was released very recently. And it invited a lot of criticism from the left. And the right actually, they are going to defend it, obviously. And in Tamil Nadu also what happened, there was a movie called Jai Bhim. I'm sure you must have watched that movie. All right, Jai Bhim. That movie again was in the eye of the storm recently, just because a particular character was portrayed wrongly. So I will discuss that. You will understand that one camp, the left, on the other hand, you have right. I believe that it is always better to be in the middle, because that is actually what Buddha has taught us in India. I mean, that is what Indian culture has taught us. The middle ground is actually, the middle path is far better than either the left or the right. So with this actually, let me begin. So you have some idea. I am going to share my PowerPoint. Your window. Please tell me whether you can see my PowerPoint right away. Can you?
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much. So now you can see this is the guy, the director, Vetrimaran. Okay, now if you see here in the interview, this is what he said. My politics is my films. Of course, his movies actually are all about his own politics. So what is resistance literature? So Barbara Harlow wrote this very famous resistance literature. I think Dr. Rajesh Nair was talking about it. So this is precisely what he says. The theory of resistance literature is in its politics. So please do understand that politics is an integral part of resistance literature. So what do we do in resistance literature? We actively engage in the historical process of struggle against the cultural oppression of imperialism. So this can be either cultural or political or economic or any form of oppression, as actually the HOD talked about, ma'am talked about in the beginning. Any struggle against a dominant ideology, that is what resistance literature is all about. So where from did Barbara Harlow take this idea from? Actually, he took it from Ghassan Kanafani. I do not know how many of you know about this guy. He's actually a very, very famous figure in the Middle East. Okay, for those of you, he is actually the most important voice of the Palestinian movement, Ghassan Kanafani. So from his book, this term resistance literature was taken. It was used in his book in 1966. Okay, and then he is in favor of, let me tell you this again, he is in favor of armed resistance. So let us not forget that he is from Palestine. Okay, so it is under occupation, We all know that very well. So he is in favor of armed resistance, and he was part of a movement called Popular Front, I think, for the liberation of Palestine. So we also know Popular Front of India. So you can kind of connect the dots. Okay, so this is precisely where resistance literature, actually the idea for resistance literature springs from. So he says there are different forms of resistance. It can be art, it can be poetry, it can be cinema, it can be drama, whatever. So there, poetry, there are different forms of resistance. Okay, so today we will discuss this. As I told you now, then I'm going to talk about this movie. I don't know how many of you have seen this particular movie, Karnan. Okay, so may I ask this question? Karnan, how many of you have seen this movie? So, if I may ask, and if it is possible to interact with some students, if not all, those who have seen this movie, so that will be great. So, as I told you, resistance is, so is there anyone? No problem, even if, I don't know, is it Dr. Tony Thomas, is it allowed for the students to speak up?
Yeah,
because I would like to interact with them.
Yeah, they can.
Okay, thank you so much, Doctor. Anyone who has seen the movie, you can tell me whether you have seen or not seen. So if you haven't seen, then I can tell you what the movie is about, and then we can discuss.
Sir,
Anyone who is willing to speak up?
sir, I think this movie is not released in Kerala.
Okay. So the movie has not yet come out. Okay. The name of the movie, as many of you know, I'm sure you're all aware of the Indian mythology. Karnan is actually a character in Mahabharata. He was one of, I'm sure you were aware of that. Actually, he was born in the Pandava family, obviously, just before she was married. Karnan, that was also a very famous Tamil movie there. And then let me again actually look at it. The problem with Google is that once I share the screen, I can't see the audience. I can only see my own PowerPoint. So I don't know how you react. All right. So no problem. I'm going to share my screen again, and just I want you to look at this. Okay. So can you see here? Yeah. This is Karnan. This is the movie, Karnan. So Danish is there, and as you can see the movie, see on the teaser, on the poster here, there are many gods. Okay, the same ones, the tribal gods, and this is the man. This movie actually is loosely based on a riot. Okay, it is called actually Kodiyankulam riot. If you haven't seen the movie, first I would like to show you some actually teaser of the movie, then we will discuss. That will be much better. So let me first do that. We will watch with the permission of Father Tony Thomas. I'm just going to share a 3-minute clip. We will watch, so you will get some idea of what the movie is like. Actually, he has taken so far 2 movies. Both of them are based on caste oppression. Point number 1. Point number 2, in movie number 1, Pariyerum Perumal, actually the hero does not actually react violently. Okay, he accepts it. Whereas in movie number 2, the hero reacts quite violently. So that is the distinction between movie number 1 and movie number 2. This is his movie number 2. Let me actually share with you this movie. Okay, just a little bit of it, not much. Okay, there you go.
வக்கீலுக்கு அப்பதான் ஊருக்காக தைரியமா நெஞ்ச நிறுத்தி எல்லாருக்கும் கேட்கிற மாதிரி பேச முடியும். இனிமே நான் வக்கீல். பரியேறும் பெருமாள் அப்படின்னா பரினா குதிரை, குதிரை மேல ஏறி வர பெருமாள். ஐயா, ஒவ்வொரு கர்ணனுக்கு ஒரு தபால் வந்திருக்கு. வேலை கிடைச்சிட்டு கேஸ் எதுவும் சீக்கிரமா கொடுங்க.
உனக்கெல்லாம் கிடைச்சிருக்கு லா காலேஜ் சீட்டு.
நீ டிசி வாங்கிட்டு போய் தமிழ்ல ஆத்திச்சூடி படி.
போட்டா அந்த கோழி குஞ்சு கண்ணு முன்னால ஒரு பிள்ளை படிப்பு விட்டு போகுது, நம்மளால அந்த மாதிரி பண்ண முடியும்.
நான் உங்களுக்கு லீவ் சொல்லித்தரேன்.
நிஜமா?
அம்மா சத்தியமா.
நீங்க இந்த நிமிஷத்துல இருந்தே தேவதை.
ஹோல் காலேஜ்லயும் உனக்கு மட்டும்தான் இன்விடேஷன் கொடுக்குறேன். நீ மட்டும்தான் என் ஃபேமிலிக்கு சர்ப்ரைஸா இருக்கணும்.
ஜோ நீ பத்தி நிறைய சொல்லிருக்கேன். நான் ஜோவோட ஃபாதர்.
பேசுறது வந்து எழுதி கொடுத்து போக சொல்லுங்க. அதுக்கப்புறம் அப்படியே விட்டுடலாம்.
அட வாப்பா, ஏன் பயந்துட்டீங்க? உள்ள வா.
எழுதி தரதானே சார் கூட்ட நீங்க.
பொண்ணா படிச்சா நீ என் பிள்ளை ஒண்ணா இருக்கீங்களா? இன்னையோட நீ வேற பொண்ணு வரன்னு ஓடி போய்
மாடசாமி நேத்து நீங்க பேர மாட்டீங்கன்னா இன்னைக்கு நீங்க ராஜாவாடா.
ஆர்கே ராஜானா நீ என்ன பெரிய இவனா அடிச்சிருப்பான்.
அங்க இங்க உளுந்து பட்டடி எல்லாம் மறைச்சிட்டு படிச்சு எந்திரிச்சலாம்னு ஆசைப்பட்டு வந்தா இல்ல கிளப் பண்ணி வரச்சே விடுதா உன்னையா. திட்டம் போட்டு ரட்டியா புடுங்கானுவ பாத்து சும்மா இருக்க சொல்றியா? அதுக்கு எவ்வளவு கோயில கொஞ்சம் பொத்திக்கிட்டு
நீங்க நீங்களா இருக்கிற வரைக்கும், நான் நாயா தான் இருக்கணும்னு நீங்க எதிர்பார்க்கிற வரைக்கும் நீங்க எதுவுமே மாறும்.
ஒரு பைய கூட அவசரத்துக்கு வண்டியை நிப்பாட்டல.
எல்லாரும் கல்ல கொண்டு வச்சாட்டா சரியா வரும்.
இப்படி புழு புடிச்ச மாதிரி வாழ்ந்து என்ன பண்ண போறியா? நாங்க இப்படி மட்டும் பார்த்துட்டோம். இனி ஜென்மத்துல எங்களால புரிய முடியாது. உங்களுக்கு என் தேவை என்னங்கிறது முக்கியம் இல்ல, என் பிரச்சனை என்னங்கிறது முக்கியம் இல்ல. உங்க முன்னாடி அப்படியே நிக்கிறேன், எப்படி பேசுறேங்கிறது உங்களுக்கு முக்கியம் இல்ல. எதிரியான உங்களோட கீழே போயிட்டா இப்ப சொல்றேன், ஏர் புடிச்ச கையில நானும் வால் புடிச்சவன் தான். டேய் மவனுக்கு கண்ணபிரான்னு பேர் இருக்கலாம், மாடசாமி மவனுக்கு கண்ணன்னு பேர் கூடாதா? நான் இங்க தான் இருப்பேன், நான் ஆசைப்பட்டதுதான் படிப்பேன். உங்களால முடிஞ்சதை பார்த்துக்கோங்க.
அழக்கூடாதுப்பா, எல்லாரும் ஆடி சந்தோஷமா இருக்கணும்ப்பா. பாப்பா டான்ஸ் ஆடிப்பா.
Okay. So you have seen this. I don't know whether how many of you have watched this movie. Both these movies are about actually caste oppression. In movie number 1, you have seen that guy. He wants to become a lawyer. So he goes to the law college, but he doesn't know English. So what happens? The teacher humiliates him in front of others. That is what really happens. And this is because he comes there in quota, because that's because of reservation. And then he doesn't understand what is happening in the college. So he humiliates him. And then there is a girl who wants to teach him English. And the guy falls in love with the girl who is actually from a higher caste. And then you know what happens. The father takes him home and then beats him up. And that is how it starts. If you look at the second movie, Karnan, because I want you to actually pay attention to all these details very, very carefully. This is actually based on an incident which actually happened in 1995 in Tamil Nadu. It happened in a village called Kodiyankulam in Tirunelveli, South Tamil Nadu. So no bus actually ever stopped there, okay, because only the Dalits lived there. It's an all Dalit village. So no bus ever used to stop there. And then all of them wanted the bus to stop there. They tried everything possible, but no, it never happened. So once there was an altercation, there was a fight between one of the boys from that village and the bus driver. So what happened as a result of that, it led to a fight between two different communities, the Dalit community and the upper caste community, Deval community in that region. So what happened? 15 murders happened as a result of this. So after that, 600 strong police troops went inside that village. It was, as I told you, it was an all Dalit village. Okay, they went on a rampage. Just imagine 600 policemen, they went on a rampage, and then what happened to the Dalits over there could only be imagined. Houses vandalized, people beaten up. So this movie is actually based on that. That is one man, Karnan. He wants to stand up for the community while others are actually ready to submit to the power of the authority. So these are the two movies actually that I was talking about. One is actually about Karnan, the other one is about Pariyerum Perumal. These are the two movies. So you haven't seen both the movies. But what is actually my problem? If you look at my topic, I said resistance, reformation, and revolution. You look at the subtitle, it is causes, complaints, and consequences. So where is the problem for me? I do not have any problem with the resistance of the Dalits because they have to. It is a system which oppresses them completely. So they have to resist. Is there any problem with it? No, absolutely not. So what is the problem? But there is a difference between reformation and revolution. Okay, as I told you, that is why I started with actually the Barbara Harlow's book and Ghassan. Do you remember Ghassan, the guy that I told you about, the guy Ghassan who actually justified armed movements, armed revolutions against that? Okay, that I told you is Palestine is actually under occupation. India isn't. That is my problem with this. So what exactly the movie depicts? If you look at actually the climax of the movie, where there are two things you have to notice. The hero kills this police officer. The name of the police officer is also very important. These are my problems. The name of the police officer, you have seen the police officer. His name is Kannabiran. You know who is Kannabiran? You know very well who Kannabiran is. Kannabiran is Krishnan. Lord Krishna is actually Kannabiran. In Tamil, his name is Kannabiran. Well, maybe you don't know Tamil. Okay, the name of the actually, if you look at that, the name of the police officer is Kannabiran, who is none other than Lord Krishna. In Tamil, it is Krishna is called Kannabiran. So do you understand? Now I am sure you understand the implications. If you look at all these people, the name of the hero is Karnan. You know very well, I told you Karnan is actually another character in Mahabharata. Okay, and if you look at all the other characters, one is Duryodhana. The village leader is called Duryodhana. Again, I don't need to tell you who Duryodhana is. Okay, do you get my point here? Now, this is where I am coming. This is my complaint with this kind of resistance moves. I am coming there exactly to my point. Okay, so my point is not against resistance. It is very much mandatory. Now, let me go to, there are three aspects where actually, as I told Dr. Tony Thomas, that I actually fully agree with the aspect of resistance. But as far as India's mainstream resistance movement is concerned, I actually differ to some extent. Today, I am going to discuss with you why I differ there and what exactly are my points of differences with them. Point number one is this. I told you about a movie, Jai Bhim. You must have seen that movie. I don't know. It's once again a very, very famous movie here. Jai Bhim, you don't know? Okay. Let me tell you what happens in Jai Bhim is again almost similar character. There are people called Irulers in Tamil Nadu. If you do not know, Irulers are actually tribal people. So when the police forces, when they cannot find the people, criminals, when there is a criminal event, when they are not able to find the right accused, then they actually catch hold of one guy from this community and then they charge them falsely. Okay, it is a false charge. And then because the police are under pressure to close the case, the superior officers ask them, come on, finish the case quickly, as early as possible. So what do? They find the people who cannot speak up, who are voiceless, and then they charge them. This is what happens in the movie in Jai Bhim, which actually was by Surya, a very famous actor. Okay, but what happens in the story? Now let me tell you, I told you about the first movie, Karnan. What happens in the depiction? If you look at the police inspector who treats all the villages very badly is named Kannabiran, who is none other than Lord Krishna. And all the other characters are named actually like Duryodhana, like Karnan. In this movie, what happens? You will be surprised. In the real, it is also based on a real incident as the first movie was. But what happens here? The real guy is Andonisamy. Okay? In that movie, his name becomes Gurumurthy. Do you see the politics in there? The real guy's name is Andonisamy, actually. The sub-inspector who actually violently abused the tribal he is one Andonisamy, but in that particular movie, the name has been changed to Gurumurthy. And Gurumurthy, if you do not know Tamil Nadu politics, Gurumurthy is actually a leader of a political party. It's an upper caste political party. So there was a lot of what happened in Tamil Nadu, there was a lot of resistance to the movie. Then said, if you are taking a movie based on real incidents, why change the name of the character? Because this is the point I want to make. In India, if you know, I am sure all of you know about the farmers' protest that took place near Delhi. Okay, do you remember now what happened near there? One Dalit Sikh was lynched there just because he touched the Holy Granth, which is supposed to be the holy book for the Sikhs. Do you know his hands were cut off? His legs were cut off. I'm sure you must have seen this particular scene. These 3 people were lynched almost in the so-called farmer protest. But this guy was lynched just because he dared to touch the holy book. Okay, but nobody talked about it. People were talking about how this defiled, the holy book. I was shocked. In India, caste actually exists across spectrum, across religions. That is the reality. We must be honest enough to accept this reality. But what happens because of certain politics, which I told you I am not into any kind of camp, which is not done properly. The investigation is not done properly. In Christianity, there is caste. In Islam, there is caste. In what happens to Pasmanda Muslims is actually anybody who wants to investigate this must study very carefully as to what really happens to the Muslims, the Dalit Muslims, the Pasmanda Muslims, or Dalit Sikhs. And do you remember when Channi was made the Chief Minister of Punjab, the Congress, beat its drums very loudly, saying that this is the first ever Dalit Sikh CM of Punjab. But if you actually look at the composition of Sikhism, Sikhism, as a matter of fact, came into being because they were against caste system, as a matter of fact. They did not believe in that, but they have caste. Take any religion in India, we have caste. So we must actually investigate as to why this happens. But what happens in these movies? This is where I am against. I am not against resistance. Do you get my point? My point number 1 is that it is wrongly portrayed as though it exists in only one religion, which is not a fact. If we want to end, if we actually want to put a full stop to caste oppression, if you want to put a full stop to caste violence, if you want to put a full stop to discrimination and oppression that happens because of caste, we must first of all accept the fact that it exists across the spectrum. This is my first problem with all these movies. But what they go to great extent to hide the fact that it exists elsewhere. Are we going to solve a problem when we are not ready to face it? Is it the way we are going to do it? Is it the way we are going to come up with resistance literature or resistance drama? Show it as it is. Why? As I told you in J-Beam, what happened in J-Beam, the name of the sub-inspector was changed. And I told you it stirred up a political storm in Tamil Nadu. Why change the name of the sub-inspector who abused the guy? And not only did they do that, but also showed a particular calendar in which the caste symbol of the 1 year movement was shown, to wrongly show that this community was wrongly implicated in this story. Not only that, you will be surprised. There are many communists who helped this guy actually to get justice. All of them are from the same community, which is vilified in the movie. They did not show in the movie that the same community people also helped him. Okay, this is my point number 3. So be truthful. Okay, resistance will succeed only when we are truthful. This is where politics ruins our struggles against oppression of any sort. Okay, the same thing happens in another movie. Okay, I'm going to show you my third complaint against these movies. Let me tell you the third, because you haven't seen another movie that I told you about, Vetrimaran. He took actually a movie called Asuran. You know Asura, I'm sure you all know about the word Asura. You know Devas and Asuras. If you are sure about the mythology, Indian mythology, you know this word Deva and Asura. Asuras actually are the people, in this, maybe some of you are not actually into the politics of Tamil Nadu, because Kerala politics is very different from Tamil Nadu politics. That is the beauty of India. You know what happens, the Aryan and the Dravidian race. You know very well that Sanskrit is vilified in Tamil Nadu. But the Manipravala movement actually gave a number of beautiful words to Malayalam. Manipravalam took a lot of words from Sanskrit. But in Tamil Nadu, what happened? There was a movement which wanted to purify Tamil, okay, of Sanskrit words. So there was opposition to Sanskrit in Tamil Nadu. So Aryan and Dravidian, this ideology is actually very much rampant in Tamil Nadu. So Asuras are the people, they believe that Asuras are all Tamilians. Okay, the Dravidians are all Asuras. And the Aryans are actually the Devas. That is what they believe in. So this movie was taken Asura. If you look at the movie, my third complaint against all this, first complaint, as I told you, it is wrongly portrayed as the caste exists only in one religion. Number two, okay, point number two, it is fabricated. Okay, many things are fabricated. We should not take sides. Point number three, I'm going to say there is a lot of violence. Okay, if you look at India today, it is much more violent. Even against the British, we were not this violent. Am I right? So we have our own armed struggle, but actually our country worshipped Mahatma Gandhi and his non-violent movement. So there is a lot of scope for that. But if you look at all these movies, I have shown that there is a lot of violence, you must have noticed. Okay, now I am going to show, like my other movies. There are a few other movies. Just for a while, I will share my screen and then I will actually. Okay, if you look at these movies, okay, now these are the movies. Okay, now you can see Karnan, you can see here. These are all small gods. I mean, the tribal gods. Okay, now if you look at this movie, this is the movie called Asuran. Then the movie is called Jai Bhim. And here, this is Kala. This is Rajini's movie. All these movies, if you look at it, these are the three movies that I'm going to discuss. But I'm not going to discuss in detail. Only one aspect I'm going to discuss. If you look at all the movies in the climax, you will see a lot of violence. Okay, so I'm just reminded, when I see this violence, I'm reminded of one book written by Professor Kancha Ilaya. Have you heard of this professor called Professor Kancha Ilaya? Students, I don't know whether you have heard of him or not. No. And he has actually come up with a book, he called Post-Hindu India. He was very recently awarded, by the US Embassy. He was called the foremost intellectual of independent India. He is called the foremost intellectual of independent India. His name is Professor Kancha Ilaya. He is from Andhra. He is a very, very controversial professor. A very, very controversial professor. Okay, his first book is called Why I Am Not a Hindu. Do you remember, like Bertrand Russell, Why I Am Not a Christian? This first book is actually called Why I Am Not a Hindu. Okay, and that has very valid arguments. But this particular book, if you remember, for me, all these books follow the pattern from the book. Post-Hindu India. I am sure you understand what it means. What he says that India is ready for a civil war. He says that India is ready for a civil war and then that's going to happen. There is going to be caste wars in India. Okay, so inciting caste war. Precisely. I will read this actually for you so that you will understand. Okay, so look here, this is what he says. That is what he says, post-Hindu India, it is going to happen. And all the Dalits and Bahujans, they are going to pick weapons, even weapons. He explicitly states, and they are going to kill them all in a fight if it's going to happen in a civil war. So this book was born. I'm going to read out from the introduction of the book, Post-Hindu India. Please actually observe this very carefully, because all the three directors are actually from that community, and then they have taken all these films. So I'm very sure they have gone through this book because this guy is very, very famous. Okay, this book was born out of a gut feeling that the Indian nation is on the course for a civil war. A civil war that has been simmering as an undercurrent of the caste-based cultural system that, now let me please hear, that Hinduism has constructed and nurtured for centuries. The Hindu cultural system is slowly unveiling its self-destructive contradictions, creating tensions in every layer of the caste society. So what is going to happen, he says. So it is going to have, finally what is going to happen, there is going to be a war. And that war will actually put an end to the fascist religion called Hinduism. So that's post-Hindu India. That is the name of the book, that is what it actually means. So I am against it. If you look at the movies, all these movies actually depict violence. Okay, violence that one cannot put up with. I'm going to show you just 2-minute clip of Asuran. You will see that what happens to this guy. Just bear with me for 2 minutes. I'm going to show you the clip and then why I am going to differ from this. Let me share. Yeah, Asuran. Just 2 minutes. Okay, from here you can see here. Okay. All right. Now you have seen, as I told you here, so it depicts a lot of violence. So are we going to actually support something which promotes violence? That is my question. So as I told you, let us be truthful. Let us not fabricate. Let us not actually, if we are truthful, we understand that in India, it is the caste oppression, caste phenomena exists everywhere. Let us not fabricate issues and let us not promote violence. Okay. So what we have to find out, that is what democracy is all about, discourse, dialogue. That is what we have to promote and not violence. And unfortunately, violence is being promoted in these movies, and that is precisely my complaint. And what is the consequence? You all know what the consequence is. I'm sure you remember the Elgar Parishad event that happened in Maharashtra in 2017. Okay, if you do not know, you must read this very, very carefully, because politics, as I told you, when resistance literature is taken into consideration, politics is important. And if you are not aware of politics, then you are, or rather you will not be able to understand resistance literature well. So what they say, for example, they said in Maharashtra, I'm sure Bhima Koregaon War, that was the war when actually what led to the establishment of British colony in India. The Marathas lost the war to the British. Do you know that this war is actually that the particular political groups promote and say this is the war where the untouchables won against the caste Hindus, and they are going to celebrate it. They are going to commemorate this. Is it something that we are going to accept? The war which happened between the British and the Indian king, that is Maratha, Shivaji's. Okay. So are we going to do that? This is my only question. Are we going to promote violence? Are we going to promote violence, falsehood, fabrication? Are we just going to escape from the responsibility by just accusing one religion? Which is not true. While Hinduism must be blamed for actually the existence of casteism in India to a great extent, all other religions also must take responsibility, which actually is a very honest appraisal of what is happening in India. Otherwise, our resistance is actually heading towards a disaster. That is my point. In fact, I wanted to discuss the origins of actually untouchability and so many other things, but I think, probably already we are running short of time. Maybe this is not the day. If we meet in person, probably that will be great. You will be really surprised if you read Ambedkar's book, Who Are Untouchables? If you take that book, that's a phenomenal book. Okay, so there cannot be a severe critic on Hinduism than Ambedkar. But if you see how untouchability happened across India, if you ask this question, why Dalits live outside the village all over the country? Why? What exactly happened? If you take that book and turn over to page number 50, you will see this phenomenal explanation of like Ambedkar as to how this came to pass. I would like to urge you to go and read this book and understand after that whether you can blame or not. And then Buddhism and the struggle between Buddhism and Hinduism in India. This is the area where politics plays. Let's say politics plays its ugly game. These are the areas. And if you want to establish a peaceful society, I think we have to choose the middle path. That is where peace is going to prevail. So I am not against resistance, because the resistance is very, very important. But I am against a bloody revolution, which is being promoted through films, okay, by certain political groups. We should be aware. Do you know I am in Oman? My students, if they watch this movie, they will not watch even one scene of violence. They are not used to it. But our people are being, okay, I don't know, fed with all these violent, extremely violent scenes. Violence is being normalized. We should not allow this to happen. That is my complaint against the kind of the resistance dramas or movies or literature that actually we are being fed with. India is not under occupation. So, okay, we don't now need to promote the ideology of Bhagat Singh or Subhash Chandra Bose. Let us do it in a peaceful way. Thank you so much for the opportunity. If you have any questions.
Yes, sir. We have some questions. Yes, sir.
Yeah, sure, sir.
Yeah. So, actually, sir was speaking about the violence that is portrayed through movies. So here, actually, we have a question from Alesh. That is, in many places in Tamil Nadu, it was seen in movies like Sarvam Talamayam and Periyerum Perumal, that tea was still being served in separate cups. So is it possible to make a difference through cinema in places where education is not properly received? So can cinema be a means to resist? We see, apart from all these violences, is cinema a means to make people educated about how all these different discriminations are being portrayed?
Of course, there cannot be any doubt about that. You know, like, for example, if we look at Indian cinema, Tamil cinema, okay, we had actually movies which talked about caste oppression in the past, okay, and they're quite sensitive. I still remember one of the movies of Bharati Raja, where actually Satyaraj would be playing the role of a caste Hindu, and the boy would ask, your name is, for example, his name is Ramasamy, and then Iyer. Ramasamy is your name. What about Iyer? Is it the degree that you got? And then the scene will be portrayed as if the boy is slapping Satyaraj. Satyaraj would feel like that the boy is slapping him left, right, and center. And then, you know, like something happens in his heart. That what about this caste names, surnames? Do we really need? For example, look, in my name, is there any caste name? Okay, I come from the land of the, Dravidian parties, where actually we have done away with the caste names, most of us, if not all of us. Yes, South Tamil Nadu is so still full of caste oppression. And then we have to promote movies like that. You don't see any violence there, you see. It is quite educative. It is eye-opening. It makes you, it makes you think. You look within yourself. So this is exactly what we want. The movies can do that, rather than promoting violence. And as though violence is the only way out. It is not. India, you have now Tamil Nadu has 69% reservation. Do you know that? This is the highest in India. 69% reservation. Did it happen because of violence? No, it didn't. You know, even Ambedkar, when he was actually given, entrusted with the responsibility of drafting the constitution, he was the head of the committee, right? He was very happy. He asked for only 10 to 15 years of reservation, that to 10 to 15%. But today it is 69%. Even Ambedkar may not be very happy about it. Okay, and when Jai Bhim movie was taken, you know, the Tamil Nadu chief minister, Stalin, went to the house of the woman, the tribal woman, and did whatever he could. So that is the state of Indian politics right now. You know, SC/ST Act now, it is the most stringent act in the world. Anybody can file a complaint against you. You have nothing. You cannot protect yourself, even if it is a false allegation. So that is where our state is. It is not that the state is against you, as it is portrayed in the movies. Sometimes it may happen, you know, just because of a riot. I told you in the Kodiyamkulam, 15 people were murdered. So it is because of that situation that police actually went there. Yes, of course, there is a caste angle to it, but do not promote violence. That is my primary point.
Thank you so much, sir. We have one more question from Nikita. She is asking, what's your opinion on Perumal Murugan as a resistance writer, sir?
Okay, yes. He actually, Perumal Murugan actually is a great guy. You know, I think as a resistance writer, his poems, I haven't gone through many of his poems. His poems are in Tamil very much, of course. So I cannot actually make a very learned comment on that because I have not gone through his poems, but I know what kind of a guy he is and what he is fighting against. So obviously, anybody who fights against caste oppression is our friend. We are with them, anyone for that matter, but in a constructive way. Anybody who promotes violence, no way.
Okay, sir. So that was indeed a great session, sir. And actually, see, whenever the term resistance is heard, see, the first thing that comes to our mind is, the violence. So your perspective of approaching the concept of resistance is really what different, and you have opened our eyes with a different perspective of resistance and how it should be, and misconceptions and the fabrications that are done in terms of resistance. So thank you so much, sir, for such a fruitful session, sir. And it's a great honor and privilege for us to have you here, sir. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Seba Susan John. Thank you, Dr. Sebin. Thank you, Dr. Tony Thomas. It's a great opportunity. My pleasure being with you all. Thank you. I take leave of you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Father Tony Thomas, may I take leave of you all?
Yeah, surely, sir. I'll call.
You want me here or can I go?
Yeah, after that, I'll call you. Sir, thank you for attending this session.
My pleasure, doctor. Thank you so much.
Yeah, just our privilege. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Bye.
That was indeed a very fruitful session for us. And now we have a paper presentation. I know that we are running out of time, but we have a presentation. So may I welcome Viji Wilson for her presentation. So ma'am, please. Sorry, ma'am, you're mute. Can you please unmute yourself?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. So, our respected dignitaries and our teachers and all the ones who are attending this webinar, a warm good evening to one and all. Myself is Viji. I'm from St. Mary's College, Clip. And for this webinar, for the asymmetrics to resistance, I have chosen Mahashweta Devi's Draupadi. In this story, I consider Draupadi as a matrix to resistance. So here I have some range issues, so I'm turning off my camera and I will continue. Okay, so resistance literature tends to resist oppression and oppressive system in a creative manner, and Mahashweta Devi, being an actor class, caringly presents it through her works. Devi, apart from being a powerful writer, she is also remembered for her activism and fights for the rights of oppressed tribal communities. Her writings are devoid of sentimentality. Actually, she doesn't like to rope her readers' emotions. In fact, she likes to stay clear. In fact, it is precisely because she is talking about complex realities for that she uses simple language to reach the reader. The stories, translated by Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak, consist of 3 stories: Draupadi, Behind the Body, and Breath Giver. Despite having separate journeys, the breast is also a metaphor for the oppression of women from marginalized tribes. Thus, it is also a unifying aspect too. Draupadi is a short story of around 20 pages, which is actually written in Bengal and later translated to English by Gayatri Spivak. The story at first appeared in Agnigarbha, Womb of Fire, a collection of loosely connected, short political narratives. And Mahashweta Devi points out in her introduction to the collection that class is not mathematics, a human being is not made for the sake of politics. I want to change the present social system and do not believe in mere party politics. This is actually the words of Devi, and she was the one who always believed in the sustained power of art, and it is crystal clear of the short story. She is introduced into the radar between the conversation of two cops, and they present two versions of her name. It is Draupadi and Draupadi. It is because as a tribal, she cannot pronounce her own Sanskrit Draupadi. Or it may be the tribal form of the name Draupadi. Through the story, she is addressed as Draupadi. It is actually an ancient proper name of the ancient Draupadi. The story has a connection with Mahabharata. Here, the child heroine of Draupadi is reconstructed in Mahashweta Devi's short story Draupadi. Where in Mahabharata, Draupadi has been publicly humiliated, and her dresses have been stripped out. And at the moment, she prays to Lord Krishna, and who comes to rescue. And on the scene, Draupadi continues to exercise her agency by refusing to be a victim, which actually makes her oppressors upright. But here in the short story, which is actually set among the tribals in Bengal, and the title character Draupadi, she is a talented child girl. She is portrayed as an illiterate, uneducated woman. And in the story, Draupadi and her husband Durna, they are on the most wanted list in West Bengal because they actually murder the wealthy landlords, claim wells and two wells, which are their main sources of water in the village. They fight for the basic means of nourishment. Durna is eventually gunned down by the policemen, but Draupadi manages to escape. She is not a typical wife who will mourn the loss of her husband because they have sacrificed their life and their brains for the betterment of their community. And finally, Draupadi is also caught and she kept in police custody. This is where the story actually begins. Over the course of few days, Draupadi is repeatedly raped, deprived of food and water, and tortured by multiple officers who say that their Beda Sahib officer Tanai is in charge of her case. After days of torturing, the police take her back to tent and tell her to clothe herself because it was her time to be presented before the officer. And they provide her water to wash herself, and they give her clothes to cover herself. But she laughs and throws the water down and takes the pieces of cloth on her tent. And the officer thinks that she has gone crazy. She walks towards Sanayak, the chief officer, naked with her head held high. Sanayak is taken aback and quickly turns away his eyes from her body because he doesn't have the courage to look into the bare body of Draupadi. She walks right to him, her hands on her hip, and says, "The objects of yours are Draupadi virgin. You asked them to make me. Don't you want to see how they made me?" When Sanai asked her to clothe herself, she replied angrily, "The clothes were useless because once she was stripped, she will not be clothed again." And in Mahabharata, it was the same. When Draupadi has been publicly humiliated, she was not ready to let her clothes strip. That's when she prays Lord Krishna, who comes to her rescue. But here, once she's here in the short Devi's short story, Draupadi, when once she's stripped off from her clothes, she's not ready to be clothed again. She spits on Sanayak's face with disgust, and she pushes him with her exposed breast, and for the first time, he's afraid to counter an unarmed woman. In the moment, though Draupadi has no weapon, she uses her body as her greatest weapon. The body, which was abused, tortured, and seen as a cause of her downfall, becomes a very weapon. She stands up for herself. She refuses to let them take advantage of her emotions, even though she has been physically assaulted. In fact, it neutralizes the very purpose. Here, Devi presents Draupadi as a strong female character, who is entirely different from the Mahabharata's Draupadi. In Mahabharata, Draupadi is a very bold queen, but here Draupadi, she is a tribal woman She is uneducated, illiterate, and not at all cultured and sophisticated like the ancient Draupadi, but she emerges as a strong character. And when most of the women are afraid to face such a reality, which actually happened in the life of Draupadi, Devi Draupadi arises as a new one from her own ashes, just like a phoenix bird, which is born again from its own ashes. Because what Draupadi felt in her life is the biggest trauma of her life. But she was born again, just like in Maya Angelou's poem, Since I Rise Again, she has been rise again. We have seen instances when people resist oppression through different actions, but here in the story, Draupadi uses her own body as a medium of resistance. The body which they considered as polluted. Maybe they thought that by physically abusing and torturing, they can blow out the fire in her. But instead, she begins to flare brighter. The officers thought that by physically abusing and torturing, she will let them know where the rest of the people who are associated with her. She will tell them where they were. But Draupadi was not ready to betray her fellow people, even though she has gone through lots of torture. She didn't utter any details about her fellow people. And her body, which she uses as a medium of resistance. The body which they consider as polluted because they thought that by physical abusing they can blow out the fire, but she actually flared brighter. Draupadi is not at all ashamed of her nakedness anymore. In fact, she makes others ashamed of by showing her bare body, which they had been mutilated. Her body is a living example of the suffering which she had gone through by the hands of authorities. And the officer Sinai becomes totally struck before his object of search because in the beginning of the story, Draupadi was his object of search. But when she was presented before his eyes, he was not able to face her because he feels ashamed of her nakedness. And Draupadi's story clearly depicts the real portraits of tribal life and tribal uprising in Bihar, just like our main chairperson said. Race and color, which is always a matter of dispute, or a matter of some kind of problem among our Indian community. And Draupadi shows a clear picture of tribal life and tribal uprising in Bihar. The officers can't do anything with them. And they will question them. They can kill, plunder, and even rape. And Draupadi, rising again from her physical abusing, shows her resistance through nakedness. Instead of being run away from nakedness, she chooses to be naked. And her very choice is a resistance against the authority. And she presents herself as a matrix to resistance. That's all about my paper. Thank you for giving an opportunity. That's all.
Thank you so much, BG Wilson. That was a wonderful presentation. So with this, we come to the end of today's session. Thank you all for being here with us. And tomorrow also, we'll meet at the same time. And tomorrow's keynote address will be by Dr. Cheryl Davis. So I hope and look forward to all of your participation. Thank you so much and good night.